Sup homies, this is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the new HP Spectre x360 13-inch. Again, because we reviewed every generation, it started out as a stunning looking 360-degree convertible Ultrabook, and it gets better every time around. This time it's the new gem cut with the cut-off corners kind of design here, more ergonomic, and the new Poseidon blue, yes, Greek god blue color, in addition to the usual dark ash silver, which is really more of a kind of brownish gunmetal. That's available too. So besides the looks industrial design to die for, we thought the HP Spectre Folio 13-inch with the leather was about as good as it got, right? We have the new Intel 8th generation Whiskey Lake CPUs inside. Don't get too excited. We'll talk more about that. It's still 8th generation, a little revision upward, but still it's the latest and greatest. We're going to look at it now. So yes, we know that HP has got design all wrapped up. I mean, literally, right? They wrapped the Folio 13 in leather. Okay, dad joke, right? I know. Is it possible I actually make dad jokes? I'm not a dad. Anyway, beauty is one thing, that's nice. You still have a durable CNC aluminum chassis here, so that finish is pretty durable historically on the Spectre x360, though it might be pretty. It's not too much to worry about there. And again, the gem cut isn't just for looks, even though it looks stunning. The cutouts on the back solve some ergonomic problems that have been an issue not just with the x360, but a lot of 360-degree convertibles. Number one, the power button being on the side, because every time you pick it up like this, you want to carry it around, up, you've hit the power button, right? Then you have to wake it up again, right? That's pretty annoying. So they moved the power button to the cutout angle on the back side. Thank you very much, whoever thought of that, right? So it's accessible, it's also memorable. You'll never forget where's the power button, which side. Particularly if you're like me, you switch between a couple of different machines and you really forget. The other side is one of the USB-C/Thunderbolt 3 ports. So that's the one you're probably going to be using for charging. So, you know, while it's nice to have your charging cord coming out the back, it's inconvenient because you have to turn the laptop around, look, fiddle, get to it. And if it's on the side, it's sticking out on the side. It's getting in your way. So this way, it's kind of angled backward. You can see where it is to plug it in, but it's not in your way. Little touches like that are what HP is doing really well these days. So as with all the Spectre x360s over the years, this is a 360-degree convertible with the yoga-style hinges. It supports touch. It has glossy Gorilla Glass NBT-covered display, a couple of display options we will talk about, and HP's pen. It comes with the regular HP pen, which is N-Trig technology for their consumer line, and it supports optionally the HP Tilt pen, which I've never found tilts so much, so I don't know. I wouldn't spend the money for it at this point, but you can do that. But that means that it's great for note-taking, it's perfect for touching up photographs, and these have beautiful displays, so it's great for that sort of thing. Also for your business users who need to create PDFs or sign them. And speaking of that, thanks to our sponsor, Wondershare's PDF Element. For those of you who just hate having to pay a subscription fee and lease Adobe Acrobat from Adobe, here's a one-stop buy, and you can do things like create, edit, PDFs. You can sign them using the pen. You can do images. You can do just about everything that you would ever hope to do with a PDF. It's available for Windows, like convertibles like the HP Spectre x360, and there is actually a macOS version too. In fact, they even have one for iOS. And it's on sale right now for the holidays as well. Be sure to check out the link at the bottom. Happily, the webcam is up top, despite the fact it has fairly small bezels. No chin cam, yay. And also, there's a new thing they've got. On the side, there's a little switch you can see, and that is the webcam privacy switch. So this is an actual cutoff for the webcam electrical switch. So hit that, and nobody's going to be spying on you through that webcam. There's other kind of what you would expect to see more in a business kind of laptop features here. Optional 4G LTE-A, for example. And the privacy screen feature we recently saw in the HP EliteBook x360 that we reviewed. And this one is actually a little bit better. This is the 3rd gen version of it. And when you turn it on, it's just the press of an FN key in the top row there. Immediately, people on the side, they just really can't see. Your screen looks sort of whited out. But it used to be that the screen was a little hard to see for you, the user, looking directly at it. And now it doesn't look so milky and washed out. It's pretty darn effective. Also, there's BIOS protection here. So say you do a BIOS update and it goes wrong, gets borked, it saves the previous BIOS and it's available on machine to reflash. So it's always a good thing to have too. And usually, again, something you'd see on a business laptop. Now, one of the things that used to make the x360 Bob the best of the best for me was the fact that, number one, it had a pretty good price and had a lot of ports. So this now is basically your premium x360 option right now. It's only available with the Core i7. And again, that's the new Whiskey Lake CPU. 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gig SSD, full HD or 4K options are available. So this one starts around $12.99. It's not super cheap, but it's not frighteningly expensive either. It's up there with the Lenovo Yoga C930, a well-appointed Dell XPS 13 with the same kind of configuration. You get the idea there. So we'll give it a pass for the price. And also because it's holidays right now, there's already a lot of sales happening for this new model too. The other thing was the fact that it had a lot of ports. And that's one thing. With the Spectre Folio 13 we reviewed, with the Spectre x360 13-inch, the thinnification and the smallification, because they're going for that XPS 13, like very small footprint, yeah, we're taking a hit on legacy ports. You get one USB-A 3.1 port, you have a 3.5 millimeter audio jack, you have a micro SD card slot. That's it for legacy. No DisplayPort, no HDMI, none of those things. But you do have two USB-C/Thunderbolt 3 full 40 gigabit per second ports, and those do the duty, with, albeit with dongles of connecting to monitors and docks and all that sort of thing. Given how good USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 docks have gotten, and HP's own Thunderbolt dock is actually pretty good, I'm okay with it. We might be getting to bobbiness here again. It has both a Windows Hello IR camera and a fingerprint scanner, and this time it's on the keyboard deck. HP asked users, and they said they prefer to have it there, even though it's not accessible when it's in tablet mode. I do prefer it because I find the little side power button mounted one kind of fiddly and hard to access. The one on the keyboard deck is just straight out easy to use. The hinges on this are pretty firm, so for those of you who are worried about the usual convertible problem of, you poke the screen some and it moves a whole lot, that's not happening here. I mean, if you really flap it hard like this, the hinge will go, but that's within reason. So for normal use, it's properly stiff, but it's not overly stiff either. So this may be very thin, it may be very light, 14.5 millimeters thick. You can see the weight on screen right now. Performance is still surprisingly good. So that's the story with Ultrabooks these days. You can get a 13-inch machine that has 4 cores inside and is capable of doing not just everyday productivity work, working in Word and Excel and all that kind of thing, spending your good times in Netflix. It can do things like Photoshop very easily. If you're doing 2D work of any sort, this can handle it. And even occasional video editing, unless you're a professional and you spend 40 hours a week editing video like we do, then you want a super fast machine. But for the average person doing videos every so often, and maybe your drone footage or some video you're putting together for work, it's more than up to the task. So inside we have that Whiskey Lake Intel 8565, that's Core i7 U series CPU, 15 watt, your usual Ultrabook CPU. So it gets a new name, but it doesn't get a new generation number. It's still 8th gen, but they don't call it KB Lake R. The big change here is that they're switching Wi-Fi over to something that we saw used in 2018's mobile workstation level laptops, and that's the Intel AC9560 gigabit Wi-Fi card. That's nice. It's not going to be the end of the world. But also the clock speeds go up just a couple of hundred megahertz. So just ever such a little bit faster. Now this does have DDR4 2400 megahertz RAM. 16 gigs is the highest you can order with. And this is soldered on board, so you can't upgrade it after the fact yourself. So get what you need. It has an M.2 NVMe SSD. You can go all the way up to a 2 terabyte. Now you can open up the bottom, and it's the usual hardship with HP Spectre laptops where you have to pull off the rubber strips on the back carefully and get the little adhesive strip with it so that the rubber doesn't stretch. So you can unscrew it and get to the internals on this. A little bit annoying, yes. I think they basically don't want consumers getting into their laptops so much. The rest of the specs you can see on screen. So, performance on this is quite good, as you would hope, right? So what about heat and cooling? The Spectre's bane has always been heat and, to a certain extent, fan noise. So they have revamped the cooling system. Again, much like we saw in the Elite X360, we have 2 fans inside, which is something you don't always see, or often rarely see, actually, inside of Ultrabooks. So the good news about the dual fan solution is it's effective, and also it makes for quieter sound. When the fans do run, and you'll hear it when you're pushing it hard, you're not just doing synthetic benchmarks like we do. If you're doing something like Adobe Premiere on this or playing with ZBrush, yeah, the fans will kick in, but it sounds more like water boiling, you know what I mean? Not with a kettle, but you hear like a shh sound, so it's not like whoa or anything like that. So yes, you'll hear it. No, it's not obtrusive at all. And HP Command Center actually has 4 different settings you can choose from. You have the default, which it tries to balance performance versus thermals and all that sort of thing. There actually is a full quiet mode if you're in a meeting and you want to make sure nobody hears the fan on it. There's a full tilt mode that only happens when you plug it in, if you choose that option. You get the idea. So there's a couple of configurations. Also, they have a heat plate now to dissipate heat, and the effectiveness of that isn't just that it's dissipating heat, but it's keeping it off of the bottom casing. So Spectre x360s could get pretty hot on the bottom because they're very thin and metal transfers heat. So now, even when it's working hard, it gets warm. You'll certainly notice it, but it doesn't get burning hot anymore. So thermals have definitely improved on this. I still wouldn't lay this on, your comforter or on a couch because the ventilation's happening, it's sucking in air from the bottom. So don't block that kind of thing. Now, when doing things like synthetic benchmarks or really doing a 4K render, say, in something like Adobe Premiere, those core temperatures will go up into the low 90s centigrade. 100 is the max allowable. Probably for most normal people using things like Photoshop or streaming video or just doing your occasional video edit or 1080p video edit, then we're going to see temperatures for the cores in the 70s to the mid to low 80s. So that isn't bad at all. Definitely, this is an improvement over previous generation Spectres when it comes to heat. One thing I will say about performance, there's your Intel 15-watt CPU, and then there's your Intel 15-watt CPU overclocked a little bit to a higher TDP, which means a thermal and power allowance. And we've seen a couple of laptops do this. Lenovo does it with some of their ThinkPads. They even did it with the Yoga C930. And Microsoft's doing that with the Surface Pro 6. So it actually will run over 15 watts as long as it can keep the thermals under control. And for those in our PC Mark 10 graph, you'll see the clock speed in Turbo Boost pretty consistently high, like almost a straight line. This one is more like your typical Ultrabook. You can see the seesaw look that's going on here on this graph. So it can sustain a super high clock speed, but it's actually, again, it's your typical Ultrabook. If you're really looking for something even more, those models that I mentioned and the higher-end XPS 13 9370 model are the ones that are going to give you that little bit of extra oomph. But if you're really, really looking for that much horsepower, you also, as long as you can afford it and you don't mind carrying it, might want to be considering a larger laptop, like a mobile workstation or something in that order. For displays, it's good, and really good, which is nice. It used to be with the HP Spectre x360 4K display options, they ran them at kind of a low max brightness. I think they were trying to help battery life because those 4K displays really do put a hit on battery life. So this time we actually have the 4K model, and they are all glossy IPS displays, by the way. The 4K model actually goes up to 422 nits of brightness. It's not going to be the best thing for your battery life if you're constantly cranking at that, but it is good if you need to use it outdoors. The gamut on that is the full sRGB gamut. You can see the rest of the specs on screen. So this is not a super wide gamut display. It is, however, a better than average AU Optronics panel with particularly good contrast ratio on board. Now, there's two other display options. There's that full HD 1-watt panel. We mentioned that in the Spectre Folio 13. That's where they first introduced that. So usually displays use about 2 watts of power for full HD. So this one cuts it in half. And that's one of the things that lets HP claim crazy long battery life. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we don't have that model in-house. That one should be pretty bright. The contrast might not be quite as good on it, but that one should hit 400 nits. And lastly, there's a full HD standard 2-watt power consumption display with the privacy screen option, which again, you hit a button on the FN row and boom, it turns it on, hit it again, it turns it off. I think the 4K and the full HD with privacy function are the ones you're going to see probably most often stocked at retailers. Again, all of them have pretty much full sRGB coverage and are quite bright. So like I said, it goes from good to great to great. Ooh, nice stuff there. So how about the pen? It's HP's usual N-Trig-based digitizer that we have here that they use on their consumer line of laptops, and it's a decent enough technology. You get your 4096 levels of pressure sensitivity. Nominally, it's supposed to support tilt, like I said. With the HP consumer line using N-Trig, the tilt is pretty hit or miss. The Elite x360 definitely has more effective tilt, and then you can go up to something like the ZBook X2, which uses Wacom EMR, woohoo, the best and best, and certainly has tilt. Anyway, this one is just fine for note-taking, hobby artists even. It's a pleasant enough experience. There is some jitter on diagonal lines, alas, for those of you who draw very slowly. That's when it matters because you might not get a very smooth line. If you're not a very slow drawer, you won't care. If you're taking notes, you're certainly not going to care about that. One thing I noticed is that palm rejection will vary depending on the program you're using. For example, Autodesk Sketchbook, palm rejection was absolutely terrible for some reason. I don't know why, but then you use the built-in Windows art programs and note-taking programs and OneNote, and it's absolutely fine, and I could rest my hand on the screen. Go figure. Again, just like we saw with the Folio, Spectre Folio 13-inch, the speakers on here are much improved over previous generation Spectre models that were awful, meek sounding. So they have quad speakers here, it's quad stereo speakers, and they are loud and reasonably full. Not oomphy bass, but it's a tiny laptop, so that's okay. But really a much better experience, and apparently they're using discrete amplifiers, HP tells me, and that's why the sound has gotten so much better. And again, it's Bang & Olufsen branded audio, and you've got a little control panel, so you can play with your equalizer and all that sort of thing. It's good stuff there. The keyboard and trackpad are good stuff too. It's a Synaptics trackpad. I know some of you prefer Microsoft Precision, but I have no complaints here. It's very reliable, it's roomy, it does gestures just fine, there's no problems. The keyboard is delightful on this thing. It's a backlit keyboard, as you would expect in this price range, but a lot of these really thin and light Ultrabooks have compromised keyboards with ultra crazy low travel. You know what I'm talking about. Not even just the 13-inch MacBook Pro is doing that sort of thing. So this one has ample key travel. It's not as deep as a big chunky ThinkPad or an HP ZBook, but it's good stuff. It's very tactile. It's delightful to type on. It's good stuff. So battery life, HP makes some insane claims with this, and maybe Whiskey Lake is a little bit more efficient as a processor goes, but they're claiming like 22 hours on mobile market test. Good luck with that. And that's at 150 nits of brightness. But that is using the full HD 1-watt panel and, you know, not doing too much with your laptop at the same time. So in real life, we have the 4K option, which is going to have the worst battery life. And actually, for a 4K display with a Core i7, it's doing surprisingly well. We average about 6 to 7 hours of battery life of this. And that's in a mix of doing something like Photoshop, which is more demanding, streaming some video, then doing some productivity work, doing a little sketching in Sketchbook by Autodesk. You get the idea there. If you do go for that 1-watt full HD panel instead, I could see hitting 9 to 10 hours with this. I don't see any way of getting to 22. And you definitely want to use headphones if you want to save the most battery, as HP mentioned, because they're using those discrete amplifiers. The speakers actually use more power than if you're using the headphone jack. It comes with the same designer sort of charger that we saw, again, with the Spectre Folio 13 with the woven braiding around the cord. It looks very nice. It's a detachable two-piece thing, but they don't give you the little separate prongs in the box for those of you who don't want to use the extension cord with it. Not a big problem there. It's a 65-watt charger, and they use the higher wattage charger, so it charges more quickly, and believe me, that is effective. You can top up the charge in about half the time that you would with some laptops using the standard 45-watt charger. Important for those who are on the go, even despite the fact that it has pretty good battery life. So that's the late 2018 HP Spectre x360 13.3-inch. And yes, we will be reviewing the 15-inch with the NVIDIA GTX 1050 Ti graphics inside as well. Anyway, is this Bob? Is this best of the best again? It's getting pretty close to that. The competition over the years has been trying to play catch-up with HP, and Lenovo Yogas, for example, pretty excellent products. There's competition, but I would say that in terms of the way this looks, you just have to control yourself because you look at this and you want to own it. So that alone is kind of nice. The performance is there. The cooling is good enough. It could be even more fantastic in terms of cooling, but given the limits of this tiny design, they've done the job. I'm not really worried about the thermals on this. The displays, 3 excellent choices for displays, depending on whether you want super resolution, long battery life, privacy. They've got it all. Optional LTE. There's a lot of good stuff here. Sure, I'd like an HDMI port and that sort of thing, but I can live without it given how compact and light this is and how delightful it is to look at. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos. What smackdowns do you want with this? Shout out in the comments, and thumbs up if you like the vid.